Last time, I heard it for about a week from my wife that I didn't have the microphone close enough. And I decided I didn't want to hear it for another week. So, yes, I'm a slow learner. So, well, good evening. So great to be here with you. And hopefully you didn't go out too much today with the weather the way it was, but it sort of thinned off a little bit with the ice and things. I don't know how many of you were here last night with Dr. Thatcher and Dr. Fong. It was just a great concert. And so I'm sitting there thinking, I think maybe Len and I could sing duets tomorrow night.
First I've heard.
Yeah. But I realized that a lot of you people just ate dinner, and it's probably not the best for you. So it was a wonderful concert. I still can't believe Dr. Thatcher playing that Rhapsody in Blue thing. It was amazing. I've always wanted to know how long that thing was, so I timed it. How long do you think that was?
8 minutes.
13, 8? It was over 16 minutes. And to see how he just kept going and going and going, it was amazing. So, all right, well, tonight we have a really fun evening. I don't know how many of you know Len Hurley. He's quite a joy. Well, you'll learn a lot of funny stories with Len, so I won't steal his thunder. But let's sing our first song here tonight. Let's open up with prayer first. Father, thanks so much for the community we have in you, the oneness that we have because you died for us. We pray that you would be glorified tonight. Thank you, Lord, for Len, for Ethel, and the joy they bring to so many of us here. We pray that you would be glorified. Thanks again for our time together. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, we'll start out with Great is Thy Faithfulness. Okay, let's, again, this is Len Hurley. Ethel is his wife, and I wanted Ethel sitting in the first row so that she would start shaking her head and saying, that's not the way it happened. But she moved to the second row, so you have to believe everything Len says now. So,
I paid extra.
Yeah, she paid extra. All right. Well, tell us about, where did you grow up? What what was it like growing up where you grew?
Well, you've heard of Mayberry?
Mayberry, yes.
Well, that might be a parallel. I grew up in Huntingdon County, a little town called Petersburg. And it was probably a town of smaller than most developments now. And we were about 30 miles from Penn State,
Okay.
about 30 miles from Lewistown, and 30 miles from anywhere. No, from Altoona.
Delta. Yeah, okay.
And I come in this small town. I come from a family that had 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to be the only surviving member of that family, but I'm also the youngest, so I guess part of that's appropriate. My mother came to the little town of Petersburg from Philadelphia, and you talk about a fish out of water.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about a very, I'll say, WASP area, white Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. My mother happened to be a Roman Catholic, went to Catholic schools, but she came to help her sister raise a couple of little children in that town. And then she met this debonair person, you know, that she fell head over heels about. And the rest is history.
How many of you grew up in a very small town, let's say less than maybe 100 people or so? Yeah, okay.
Well, I feel right at home.
Okay. Okay. Now, okay, your mom and dad, what did your dad do?
My father was a butcher, a meat cutter,
Okay.
and his father was also, and 2 other brothers were, at least part of the time in their lifetime.
Huh.
And my grandfather had this was of course before me, but he had a store basically in the basement of his home. And when the Depression came, he owned the house, so the story is that he sold it to my aunt, their only daughter, for $1, so he would not lose his house.
Okay.
And he closed the store. But then my father, through the CCC camps,
Sure.
was trained as an equipment operator. And we used to go for a drive through the state areas of Huntingdon County, in that area, and they'd say, yeah, I helped build this road.
Okay, sure.
This type of thing. Well, during the war, World War II, he got a job. I don't know how he ended up there, but he ended up in Baltimore running a bulldozer. And some of it wasn't too exciting.
Yeah.
As my brother relayed to me later, he said, yeah, you've got to move this pile of dirt from here over to here. And then you'd sit there for a while. Now you got to move that pile of dirt back over.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, we were in Baltimore area about 2 years, but the rest of them we went back to Petersburg. And there, in the early 50s, I was born in 42. In the early 50s, my parents opened a store in the same location.
Okay.
Hurley's Meat Market.
Hurley's Meat Market.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd have loved to have gotten a hold of the sign that was up in front of the store, but it disappeared somewhere in an auction. It was so successful that he went to the town of Huntingdon, which is about 7 miles away. That's where Juniata College is.
Right, yeah.
And he worked there as a meat cutter during the day and would come home and cut what my mother might be able to sell the next day. So it put food on the table.
Yeah.
You know, as I've reflected on my life, I've thought, I probably didn't know how poor we were, and not just we, but people around us. But again, I look back and say, well, there was nothing wrong with that.
Now, as long as you had food on the table and
And I could stick my hand in a penny candy jar.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
not jar, but in the box.
How many of you people had some aspect of like meat cutter, like a butcher, or your dad, or somebody? Yeah, I thought there were a fair number. Yeah, fair number.
And my role in that was that I remember doing. There's a lot of my childhood I don't remember.
Okay.
And I'll get to
Yeah.
why I think that might be. But I remember cutting beef for Hamburg, and you know, we had a big butcher block, and did that, and of course scraping it off. And the other thing, as go back through my memory, I remember. How many of you remember the oleo or butter, whichever?
Oh, yeah.
It had in the cellophane, it had a button on it. Well, I used to get what for messing with those little buttons, because if you push that, Leonard, and by the way, at that time it was Leonard. Thank goodness my wife changed that. That button is what you colored the butter with. That was the purpose of it. It was like a red or an orangey button. I say button, a little tab. And when you bought that, you pushed it. And of course, my mother said, Leonard, I can't sell that if you break that, if you move that around. And I remember doing a little bit of, it was a hand crank that you sliced meat with. And I found out a few years later that one of my, I'll say, second cousin has that
Oh, wow.
meat grinder in the church that he's involved with, a little country church. They slaughter some pigs or whatever every year and make sausage and all, and he's still using it.
Still use it, yeah. What was school like for you back then?
Well, again, I didn't realize this until I went to Shippensburg. I'm sitting in an educational class, and they're talking about one-room schools, and I thought, no, I didn't go to one of those, although I know some of you have. And then I got to thinking, I thought, I went to a four-room school. And that was 4 rooms for 6 years. And that wasn't because I liked the teacher and stayed or anything. We had first and second grade were down the first floor. Upstairs you had the third and fourth on one side, and you had fifth and sixth on the other side. And we were split, and the teacher would teach third graders something, and then she'd go over and give you something to do, and teach the fourth grade. And I liked that, especially when it came to math, because at that time I liked math, and I thought, oh, they're learning something I don't know how to do. I can learn how to do long division before I really need it, you know? Things of that nature. So it worked for me.
Yeah. So as families, you're growing up, you went to high school there, I assume?
Yes.
What was that like? I mean, was anything stand out for you in high school, or?
Everything's a standout for me. No. I've enjoyed myself. Probably too much. I know too much in college that I enjoyed myself. But no, the other thing is my father died when I was 12 years old. So my mother was left operating the store for a period of time. I didn't say she was making any money, but operating the store. And my father died post-operatively. And it was an unexpected thing. I think that's probably the reason that from my early childhood, I truly, and it's not because I'm older, I haven't, Ethel could tell you, I don't remember a lot of it. And I don't know if it's been blocked or what. But and with that, I would just like to say that even with that, my mother saw that there were all 3 kids were educated. My brother was in Penn State when my dad died, and he was in ROTC, and he ended up with a degree in mechanical engineering and went in the Navy to fulfill his duties. And my sister, that of course was only 30 miles away. And some of the brilliant people in town had said to my mother, well, he's going to quit school, isn't he, and support the family? No way, she said.
Yeah.
Of course, what I didn't know was that my mother didn't graduate from high school. And she didn't tell me until I was married and an adult.
Wow.
And part of that was she thought, oh, Leonard's liable to decide that he doesn't need to finish school either or something, even though I liked school. That wasn't a problem. I liked so much I stayed there for 30-some more years afterwards. But that was her wisdom.
Really important to her.
A little story on that. When I was in a class one day, and in a small town, everybody knows everybody and all their business, of course. And they said, well, and I thought this was a heck of a thing for this teacher to ask, but she said, how many of your parents didn't graduate from high school? I put up my hand. I didn't know that she hadn't.
Okay.
But when I'd ask her something, oh, I don't know, I didn't finish school or something, and she would just joke about it, but never said it was real. Well, it turned out it was real.
It was real. Yeah.
My sister from this little town went to Jefferson Hospital and got her RN.
Oh, wow.
And national certification as an RN at the time, which means she could have worked, I think, anywhere in the country at that point. So she did well. And then I came along and again, didn't look at many jobs or what I was doing. I ended up in education and at Shippensburg.
And so you went to Ship?
I was there after the normal school, though.
Oh, okay.
And the college. Actually, I was there, I think, from the college, during the college to the university transfer.
Oh, when they switched over. So now, first of all, why'd you go to Ship? This is Shippensburg.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that?
It was close, and I was thinking about teaching, so I went to one of those schools.
Yeah.
And that was about 60 miles over a couple mountains.
All right, so now you go to Shippensburg. Have you met Ethel yet? No.
I met Ethel spring of my freshman year.
Anything special about your meeting?
Oh yeah. First of all, I pride myself, at least, in being rather prompt and on time. And this night, she's at Polyclinic. First of all, how I found out about her is I'm in class one day, and this girl said, Carol, one of my friends, said, hey, Leonard, look at this. Well, yeah, I see. She's going to be not too far from you. She's going to be in Harrisburg. You're going to be in Shippensburg next year. And maybe you could make a connection here. Oh, okay, Carol, thank you. They had met at church camp. That's where the two of them had become friends as counselors. Mm-hmm. That's right, because that was saying, yes, that's right. Okay.
It's called God's sovereignty, that's why.
And anyway, long story short, my roommate was driving. He was not too prompt. We got there real late, and I've never met this young lady. It's for an interfraternity dance with a party afterwards. And thank goodness she had a friend that kept her there until we got there.
Wow.
And so then it was a long-range romance, and after she was out for a year because hers was a 3-year program, and I was in a 4-year program, and we were married the same year that I got out of Ship.
Okay.
And Ethel is from South Williamsport. That's the other side of the track. No, that's the other side of the river.
River.
And home of Little League, and she'll tell you all about that if you want, and some of you have heard it.
Sure. Now, after you graduate in college, then what?
got a job, and first job was in Loyalsock, which happens to be a suburban area of Williamsport.
Okay.
And so this was back in Ethel's home territory. And I was in there for a person that was on a National Science Foundation, and he was going to be gone only a year. But I would have had a job, but I had that yearning to return to where I grew up.
Go back home, yeah.
And so I broke Ethel's heart and her parents' heart and moved her out. We were married, by the way, on Memorial Day, and that was so I could remember it. And then they screwed me up.
Why is that?
Well, they changed the date. And so, thank goodness, when I was older and was working, and I was at Bedminster, the secretary out there, Dottie Ludlow, she and Milt's anniversary was the next day.
Okay.
So sometimes I would go to work in May, and Dottie would say to me, "Well, Len, you remember, we have an anniversary this weekend." So that helped.
Yeah.
But
You went home, and how long did you stay there?
oh, not too long, till they threw me out. No, I went there, and the place where first of all, my degree is in math and physics. Now, don't ask me any of those questions, because that's been many, many years I can now say that. But I was working for Virginia Valley, which is a very small school that I graduated from in Huntington County, and I was teaching fourth grade. And on an emergency certificate.
Yeah.
And I was there in that position. On my second year, I was having a health problem. I would be standing at the board and sort of forget. I didn't realize it at the time, but I would forget what I was writing.
Wow.
And so then I went home and my words wouldn't come out. Ethel said I could swear pretty good. But again, I grew up with a lot of that.
Yeah.
Not in my family.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so we went to the doctors. They said, "Well, I think he's got a brain tumor back here."
Wow.
I said, and they said to Ethel, "Do you want to go?" We would send him to Geisinger,
Right.
which is not too far from Williamsport,
Right.
or Pittsburgh. Well, we didn't know anybody at that time in Pittsburgh. Ethel says, "We'll go to Geisinger. I can stay at my parents' house, etc." Turned out after a few days in there, they found we had signed the papers for surgery. And the doctor said, "We have one more test to run, and if it's a certain way, I'll be going right from you to insert in surgery. If it is the other way, then
Yeah.
different diagnosis." It turned out that I had encephalitis.
Wow.
And I did not need surgery. I did not have a brain tumor. I used it for an excuse the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's right.
No, go ahead. I was 25 years old.
25. Wow.
So I finished out at the end of that second year of fourth grade by not being able to go back to school. And I thought about one little character that I had when I was teaching fourth grade in that class. So he came up to me one day, and the librarian kept sending me a couple of notes because he was in my homeroom, and said, his name was Jackie, and they said, "Jackie has a book out. Get him to return his book. It's been out for weeks." And so I called up Jackie to my desk, and Jackie had a little speech problem. And Jackie said, "Mr. Hurley," he said, I didn't know anything about the book, you know. He said, Mr. Hurley, what would I want with a book of old poems anyway? I said, well, I don't know, Jackie, but you better check with her.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I was working at that time then on my master's degree, and I went into counseling, and I went to the elementary counseling because
Yeah.
I was working in elementary, liked the kids, and that sort of thing. So I've been at all three levels, from high school to junior high to elementary. And so happened there was a change within that school, and they offered me the job of elementary counseling, so most of my time was spent in that field. And I was one of the early ones in that field. And people say, well, what was that like? And I say, my answer is, I was usually in between things.
Yeah.
In between teacher and child, maybe with parent and child, that type of thing. But it was, and then I was in a situation, this is still in Juniata Valley, where it became a political thing.
Oh, yeah.
They tried to get rid of a elementary principal, and so what they did is they eliminated my position because it was new, and thought that will make this guy quit. Well, he fooled him, he didn't.
So, but you had to move on.
Well, yes, I could have, I did, yes. And at that time, at that time I saw an advertisement for Northern Tioga,
Whoa.
which is up
Way up
clear
there.
up there.
Yeah.
And Springford School District.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And of course, a little story with that one. Remember, I grew up as a hick in this little town, so I'm sitting for an interview down in Spring City, and they're talking about this elementary position, and I look at it and I see these buildings that are so many floors high and all, and I sit there and I thought, man, this is a fish out of water. This isn't for me.
Yeah.
I've laughed about it ever since. So I went to Northern Tioga.
Oh, wow.
Now, Northern Tioga, in Tioga County, there are 3 school districts, and I was the elementary counselor for 3 school districts with 3, there was a merger, of course, at some time, and so we had 3 different principals that I worked with. And believe it or not, 2 of them were from Long Island.
Oh, wow.
They came there so they could get into the principal's
Yeah, sure.
ship. And the other one was Frank Lewis, and his dad at the time happened to be Philadelphia Flyers physical therapist or something in that field of it. And I didn't know anything about hockey either.
Yeah.
So we moved there with, I guess we moved there, as it says, with 2 children.
2, okay.
2 children. And I was there, and once I was there, I found out that everybody that's there, if you weren't born there, they were trying to get out of there.
Yeah.
So this is a district that's 12 miles from north to south and border to border of the county, so it's 60 miles that way,
Wow.
or 50 miles that
Yeah.
way, which makes it to be 600 square miles. And then and so it was again, I told you where I grew up and about the religious and that type of thing. Well, I happened there to have 2 Jewish principals and 1 Catholic principal. And I made out very well. I learned a lot from them. During that year, I must have done something right because in the spring, the board approved for 2 more counselors, 1 like to be in each section.
Schooling, yeah.
And I said, this is a good time to get out of here,
Yep.
since they don't expect me to stay anyway.
Yep.
And plus, when we went home from Christmas vacation of visiting our families, we only had 30-some inches of snow in the yard. And by the way, we were close to New York.
Yeah.
And that is that we could look out our kitchen window and look into New York
Sure, right,
State.
yeah.
And the other thing, we learned to do a research on this journey. Ethel is an RN, was an RN. Closest hospital to the north is Corning, New York, 50 miles away. The closest one south of us is Wellsboro, 50 miles away.
Oh, wow.
Well, that helped us make our decision too.
I guess so.
So that's when I again went back to the Shippensburg information and said, where's there a job? And they said, oh, there's one place called, well, it looked to us like it was Percasey.
Percasey.
And so we said, well, I guess we'll go to Percasey. Or I guess we'll apply there. So we drove down Market Street, down the main hill in Percasey.
Yeah.
And one of us turned to the other and said, this is the kind of place we want to raise our kids. And at that time, there was a sewage moratorium, so there were no houses being built. There was very little rental. It was a little tough. Harold Gross, who was a realtor, was very nice to me and with us, and even took us to lunch at the time. And then he said, well, I really don't have anything. Here's the phone book, and here are the realtors. I happened to call a guy that you may have heard of.
Who?
His name was Roy Landis.
Oh,
Well, Roy Landis just had recently sold a property in Blooming Glen to a young man whom I never met, but he really wasn't quite ready to rent this because he was going to do some more, but Roy talked to him, and we moved into Blooming Glen for a year. And just so happened that Roy and Joan lived across the street. And that's where we had our first real connection with probably the Mennonite community. And with that, just very quickly, Ethel, we had another child there, our third child, and that was it. I mean, that was the last. We have 3 children. Greg was born, and Ethel during that time developed phlebitis of her legs. And we found out that these Mennonite church, Blooming Glen Mennonite, said, well, we're going to be bringing you meals. I said, oh, I can cook. Oh, no, we're bringing you meals. So
yeah.
that's where we first were exposed to that, which was a very nice, which we carried on in our life. Ethel did with others. So very nice thing.
Oh, that's great.
And everything worked out. And then after being there for a year, we ended up with a half a twin in Percasey, and we're there. And then from there to another, our house in Percasey, our single home, which happened to be a Sears house.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Now, when I say Sears house, I mean it was prefab. I don't guarantee that it was a Sears house. It could have been Montgomery Ward. It could have been somebody else.
Yeah.
We were the only this. Well, first of all, to backtrack just a little, when we were living on 4th Street in a half a twin, and it's a very nice half a twin, big half twin, we were walking up to the carousel that Percasey runs periodically. And we had this other couple with us, Dick and Sylvia Yoder, friends of ours from church, and at that time, and they're with us, and I said, well, that's the kind of house that I'd really like to have. And they both started laughing because they'd grown up in the area. I said, do you know whose house that is? I said, no, that's Claude Bowen's house. That didn't mean anything to me. Well, it turns out that the Bowens were in their 90s, well in their 90s. And they, they said, oh, they're standing in line waiting for that house. Well, in the meantime, Roy Landis had called me sometime, one Easter holiday or whatever, and said, I think you ought to think about getting your real estate license. So I said, well, we'll think about it. And well, I did and got it, and I worked for Roy part-time. And so I was on floor duty, and I knew that both of these folks had died. And so I knew the house was empty, and I called the listing realtor, who happened to be Jim Hackett in Sellersville, and he said, yeah, Len, he says, you can stop over and get the key if you want, and you can take your wife in there. So I said, okay, I'll be over. Called my wife and said, here it is. How I had noticed it in the News Herald, which comes out, at that time was coming out once a week.
Yeah.
And that happened to be my night to be on floor time where I was answering calls, etc. I said, what house does this remind you of? Magnificently shrubbed, overlooking the park.
Yeah.
And she said, that's the Bowen house, because we knew they had died like 1 month apart.
Yeah.
Okay. So I go pick up the key, pick up Ethel. We have kids with us. And of course, we didn't leave them in the car, you know.
That's good.
Yeah, we were nice that night. So we know they're dead, but we walk up these steps and there are lights on in the house. And I have the key to the front door, and I start to open it, and this door's unlocked. So I pull the door shut. I knock on the door. A lady comes to the door, and she's been drinking a little too much. She was their nurse. She was apparently drowning her sorrows. Anyway, she followed us around and kept trying to sell us the house next door that wasn't for sale yet. But we ended up buying it. Needed a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It was a Sears house. Actually, some of the joists and the rafters in it were stamped Bowen. And we sold that in 23 after being there for like 44 years.
Wow.
And it was not easy to leave with little league fields in the backyard and that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
But we did. And
how did you get into this kind of work?
This kind of playing.
Yeah,
That's not work.
Oh, that's not work. Okay.
Well, it was for a while.
Explain that to what that is.
Okay. How about a picture? Can we flip up a picture of a scroll saw? Is Ruben here?
Yeah, he's up there.
Okay.
He'll get it.
How I got into it is, okay, this is my scroll saw. And I have a couple blades here if anybody wants to see the size of them afterwards. We didn't know how this would work, but this right here is the blade, right up here. And I work on this flat table. And I'll take a board and put a pattern on it. I do not design the patterns, but I will put a pattern on it, or it'll have a pattern on it. Any place that you see a hole, this one doesn't have many holes, but any place you see a hole, I've had to take a drill and drill a little hole there and then saw out that part. Then take my blade apart and move on to the next thing. And if you watch in the future somewhere, you will probably see a picture. I have a picture, I'll say what it is. I have a picture of a Christ head. And it has a lot of symbols of Christianity in it. And it was done by a person that I met at a woodworking show. How I got into it, first of all, I should back up just a little bit, is I was wise enough to know that my kids didn't need me to take them somewhere anymore. Our youngest son happens to be a dancer. And so we needed somebody out of the area for him to have private lessons. And so many times I drove him to this lesson. But then when he started to drive, he didn't need Dad anymore for that. So I was wise enough to say, I need a hobby. So I started with photography and played with it some and enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And then I went to a woodworking show, and I saw this guy doing these things, and I thought, oh, I think that would be fun. And so I bought myself an inexpensive scroll saw. And I found out at that time, these blades are just straight blades. And they'll be up here if you want to look at them afterwards. But the blades for this saw had pins on the ends of them. So you had to have a hole bigger, let's say, than more than 1/8 of an inch to be able to get the blade in your hole. Well, that didn't work very well for me. So I did that for a while. And I happened to paint in the summertime, too. And every teacher knows how to paint.
Well, I don't know about that.
Okay. Well, many of us knew how to
Yeah. Some people knew how to do it. Like
so one summer I took some paint money, and Ethel was so gracious to give me her blessings, and I bought a good scroll saw. Happens to be the same one.
Huh.
And I found it was a lot smoother. It didn't have pins on the ends, etc. And so I basically taught myself to scroll saw.
Huh.
And been doing it ever since.
Now, he doesn't just to show them here. Where else do you go? I mean, where have you gone, I guess?
Well, Ethel was one that she was always supportive, but she wasn't into this. But then we happened to be at Skip Back Days one time, and the guy had a little bunny like this. Some of you may have bought one sometime. There's a little bunny, and it had a hole in its head. It had interchangeable ears, cloth ears. And it had a ribbon around its neck or whatever, and a very simple bunny. And so I'd never met this man, and we were crafters beside each other, and I was in the silhouette work. And he and his wife were leaving the area, moving down south somewhere. And he said to his customer, he says, well, I won't be here next year, but I'm going to give Len the pattern. He had just met me.
Huh.
And she had truly a trash bag full of ears that she had made. With each bunny came 7 ears. You got to have them for every season, you know? Bunny for all seasons. Well, then he said it later to another customer. So I started thinking, and long story short, he did give me the pattern the next day to it, and his blessings, and that bunny made us a few bucks. Shows that we did were such things as we did Skip Back Days. We did a few out of state with a promoter that we were working with. We did a place that I think you probably have heard of. Where, Ethel? Kutztown, the Kutztown Folk Fest, which is not up for next year, I understand. Yeah. But anyway, in there were a lot of Southern crafters.
Sure.
That was quite an experience, too. Yeah. One lady, first day again, she said, well, did you get your pickle out? Did you get your first pickle out? What are you talking about? You know, and she said, well, you know, finally, Shirley explained it to me.
Oh, okay.
She says, you know how hard it is to get that first pickle out of a jar? Well, that was like that first sale. Did you get your first sale yet?
Okay.
So, get the pickle out.
Pickle out, yeah.
So I found, for another year, I found a little spear-like thing which is to help get pickles out. I took it and gave it to Shirley.
Okay.
That was a lot of fun meeting those people.
Uh-huh.
You know.
Yeah.
And we traveled back to Huntington County. There was a big one there that they would do.
Do you still do that kind of?
No, we retired.
Yeah, retired.
This bunny had a little card in it that had our name and all. We got calls for years, actually, after we quit making that. And all my wood came out of Draper's dumpster, who was a furniture maker in Ferguson.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
I told him when I retired from education, I said, if you get down the road and you see somebody's rear sticking out of a dumpster, it may be mine. Just toot and keep on going, you know.
Yeah.
So, yes, that was...
You know, Len's favorite verse is Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. The importance of, he's learned over the years that there's a lot of things that happen that, like his dad passing away when he was young, and things you may not be able to understand. But the scriptures encourage you, are you willing to trust me as you go through? And all these different places where Len's been and things open up, God had opened up those things for him. So he's willing to walk in faith as he went along. It's a great verse. I love that verse. And so,
Well, I've needed them too, because there were a couple other medical things that have gotten in the way. But
yeah.
somewhere, let's see here. I had, let's see. I didn't jot it down as far as how old I was or whatever, not that it's that important. But at 57, of course, was diagnosis. Well, they thought I was having a heart attack because something didn't feel right in the Adam's apple. So don't think, folks, it's always got to be the chest.
Mm-hmm.
And turned out it was coronary artery disease. They checked it out, and there was a blockage, but it was too close to an intersection at that time to do anything with it. And so went on diet and good, clean living. And living with a nurse, you don't have much choice.
Yeah.
And probably 10 years or so later, something didn't feel quite right. Back to cardiologist. They sent me again to Lehigh Valley and checked it out. And at that time, they did angioplasty, but no stents.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So I've been very fortunate that way. And I'm pretty much able to do what I want to do. Then later, I'd always had a little trouble with diverticulitis, but I'd never really been to the doctors. And then one Sunday, it got pretty bad. It was in football season. And that's when Ethel said something about taking me to the ER, and I didn't give her any grief.
Yeah.
And turned out that I had some ruptured diverticuli.
Oh boy.
And I ended up with a temporary, thank goodness, colostomy.
Oh boy.
And my wife did yeoman's duty dealing with that. Thank you again.
That's why God gives us great wives.
And that's for sure. And it was reversed. And I'm very grateful for that. I've always seem to be able to, and I don't want to brag about this because I hope I can always keep it, and that is when these things face me, I find it very easy to put it in God's hands.
Wow.
I'm very willing to say, God, if it's your will, please help me through this. Please guide the hands of the surgeon and nurses and others, and that type of thing. And that was successful reversal, and I'm not one of these guys that will tell you, well, I've lost so many inches of this part of my body or whatever. I have a friend that does that, but it's not me. And then, of course, when I was here, I do have glaucoma, and I have, of course, had cataracts removed, and then I have macular degeneration with that, and that's a hereditary thing. And the eye doctor would say, well, how old are you? One of these days, if you live, he said, this doesn't sound very nice, but if you live to be old enough, you're going to need a cornea transplant. I thought, oh boy, go to another specialist, you know. And then, well, a few years ago, actually I was here. The eye really started to water, etc., and it was time for that. And I went in, and they said, yes, it's time. And so I had a cornea transplant, which truly was a piece of cake, and it was done locally. In fact, I laugh about where it was done because...
McDonald's?
Almost.
Almost.
You know where Henning's is?
Yeah.
You know, Grandview has a place right down there. It was done down there and done very well.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't know it, but the doctor's office said, we have a cornea specialist right here. And he did it, and I would highly recommend him. He was
It's one of the
wonderful.
blessings about living in this area. We have the opportunity to have great doctors and things. Very
Yeah, that's one thing we're very thankful for. We're thankful our kids had the experiences they had here, grew up here. One of the things don't want to forget to say, as you review something like for tonight, it really makes you think about certain things, where you've been and all, reactions. I know some of you have been up here and done it. And the same thing is true here. It's been good for me. I realized how important the table is. What I mean by a table is that our family grew up sitting around a table talking, after meals, whatever. I was at a conference of elementary counselors and principals years ago, probably in the early 70s. And I said, wait a minute, let me see if I'm understanding you right. Remember who these people were.
Yeah.
You're telling me that you're only eating with your family maybe 1 or 2 nights a week?
Wow.
Folks, if you want to know what happened to the American family,
Yeah.
and I said,
Yeah.
I came back shaking my head. I thought, I can't believe it, especially with these people that should know a whole lot better.
Yeah.
And we still do it. We're at our son's house or any of the kids' homes. Same thing.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time around the table.
It's been, talking to the kids and things. And by the way, one of their sons, the fellow he was talking about, the dance, he is a dancer at Sight and Sound.
He was. He was there for 12 plus years. He is, he's not built like myself or our other son, our oldest son. He's the youngest. He's 6'2", trim, powerful,
Yeah.
very peace-loving, but don't get him mad. No. Greg went to work for Sight and Sound the week that the big theater burned.
Oh, yeah.
He was off campus at the time. He was hired as a show captain, meaning that once a show was up, he was in charge of making any corrections. He was not the choreographer at that point. But somebody in the leadership said, don't worry about this with the choreographer today. Greg has it, and he's going to teach it to us. So a year or so later, Greg became their choreographer. Later, he became their assistant director. And he is now teaching dance at Messiah. And if you have any relatives there and they need a phys ed course, they can sign up for dance. That works as a phys ed course.
Yeah.
Our other kids, just to be in fairness, Todd is local. He was in the banking business for 30 plus years because he started while he was in college. And then some things happened, and Todd is now selling real estate, and thank goodness, because he took real good care of us selling our house.
That's good.
And Valerie has a marketing degree. And the good news on Valerie is we heard on New Year's Day, we got this call. Valerie has lived for 20 plus years in Orange County, California. And she works remotely with Leonard, the builder, and has for several years now. And she called us to inform us that she and her husband would be returning to southeastern Pennsylvania. And we've been pinching ourselves ever since.
That's neat.
And she is in the area, but due to she's a very brittle diabetic, but she takes very good care of herself. But Valerie is, this is her first week of work here. She's staying with a friend right now. Her husband's still trying to get the house it's getting wrapped up to get sold. And we thought, well, we can't advertise it on Sunday because of the Super Bowl. Plus, we're all Eagle fans.
Oh, yes.
And then, so anyway, they'll be putting it up probably in the beginning of the next week.
Now, before we finish up here, you mentioned something about Love Week, or...
Oh, yes. I forgot about that. We celebrate Love Week in our house, and we've been celebrating it for probably over 35 years. I just got a nod of approval. So that's Started out in my work, and with one of the elementary principals, we were having a kindness type of activities, and we were encouraging kids and staff to be kind, and it could be a little thing. It doesn't have to be anything grand or whatever. And so we were doing this at school and doing some things with it. And this principal and I, by the way, had lunch with a group of kids at least once a week we had a group in to have lunch with us, and sat around and talked and made them feel part of us.
Yeah.
But anyway, from this I thought, well, Valentine's Day, and I'm telling you this, folks, because of Valentine's Day coming up, and you don't have to be, still have that loved one, but there are other loved ones or friends, and you can use this on. And so I decided, well, Valentine's Day is the 14th. Ethel's birthday happens to be on the 16th. So, gee, this got a little bit dicey, from 14. Anyway, I decided let's have a week of it.
Yeah.
And it's not big things. It can be going to lunch, which we do a lot now.
Yeah.
It can be whatever. It can be a little gift. It can be a big gift, what have you. So that is how Love Week got started, and I will be kicking off Love Week in some fashion, and I don't know how yet. Might be a bouquet of flowers or whatever. It doesn't have to be grandiose. And I'll start that on the 10th, and we'll run it until her birthday.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. So
that's Love Week.
Yeah, well, you can see on the back of that sheet a great song that is one of Len's favorites. He Keeps Me Singing, but we probably know There's Within My Heart a Melody. And when you talk to Len, that says it all to him. So let's sing that song. I want to thank Len for coming tonight. In the front, you'll see just a few. He's had some on display out there. But we have one more to show you that is absolutely phenomenal. You want to put it up here, Ruben? Look at that.
If you wanted to see the real thing, it's in our apartment. It's 30-some inches, 36, 38 inches tall. That started as cabinet doors. I had a good contact. I didn't get to talk to you about my connection with the Amish, but anyway, Reuben was the kind to take these pictures for us and put them up here. But he started his cabinet doors, planed them down. I don't design the patterns, I just follow the pattern. And some people wanted to know how many holes does it have in it. I'm not that much of an idiot to count holes. I know some people that are. And it plays Westminster chimes.
Oh, wow.
And
How long do you think it took you to do that?
I do not know. Ethel didn't know I was doing it because the basement wasn't the neatest place, and if she'd gone down any place but the freezer, we may have not found her for weeks. I really don't know, and this one is oak, but that's where it came from, the pieces came from. Yeah.
What a gift and a talent. And I'll tell you, that's a very interesting thing with regard to looking for new opportunities for you to learn things. You cannot stop learning. You've got to look for those opportunities. Jen's trying to get back to crocheting. Trying to. But, you know, there may be other things, you know. If you want to learn how to play guitar, see Addie. You know, she's more than willing to teach you. But start to keep looking. You got to keep your brain functioning. You give up on that, not good things happen. Now, to show you how important it is to keep your brain functioning, the one final thing we're going to do tonight, Reuben's going to show us right here, and I need you to sing this.
My blade is white.
Patience is a virtue.
Yes, it is. But my brain is a blank, folks.
That's too spiritual. It's coming. There it is. Now you gotta sing it with us.
Eagles fly to victory. Fight, fight, fight!
Eagles fly. Okay, there we go. Now, I don't know whether you have that little sheet. Okay, Carol has some. If you don't have a sheet with the words, you need to practice that. You can go back to your room, your apartment, and you practice it. You know, you saw what happens when Len practices his thing. People think it. So you practice that a few times, and so on Sunday, when they're singing this for the Super Bowl, you could be part of it. Now, we're having a tailgate thing. If you haven't signed up and you want to come downstairs and sign up for it. We have some games, we had some food, got a great video, funny video about football. So you're more than welcome to come from 4 to 5 and get back, and you can sit in your easy chair and watch the game there. So thanks so much for coming tonight. Let's close with prayer. Father, thanks so much for Len and for the abilities you've given him in so many different ways. How you used him both in the classroom and working with parents, and now with this beautiful scroll saw work that he does. Thank you for the joy of him sharing with us. We ask your blessing upon he and Ethel, and pray that you would continue to protect them. In Jesus' name, amen. Come up and take a look at some of the samples here, and also the blades. It's very interesting. Thanks for coming tonight. Oh, by the way, next month is Henry Moore. So Henry's really looking forward to this. I just said, you grew up on a farm, didn't you? He said, oh, that's just one of many things I've done. So we'll hear a whole lot of stories next month. So thanks so much for coming.